Hello friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop. Got the Thomas Mandolin for Virginia pretty much finished. This will be its last blonde moment on this earth. It's getting ready to become a redhead. It's going to be sunbursted with black and red. I'll have to do a little bit of a sunburst around this rose so that the rose can be seen. I will dye the rose red and the leaves and stem green. And anyway, it's quite a job to stain and sunburst this. I have the rose dyed red on the peg head now. You can kind of see that. There's some curl in the pearl, so when I turn it different ways it looks like a dark line going through there, but it's actually just the curl in the pearl. Anyway, I just thought I'd show it to you in its final form just before we start the staining process. We'll bring you back as we make some progress. It's been a couple of minutes and I have dyed the rose red on the back. I can see the camera's washing out with all that white, so I'm going to try to cover up some of that white. Anyway, you can see there that it's a red rose with the green stem. And what I'll do now, at least this is my plan, I'm going to coat the whole mandolin in a light brown dye, just light brown. The reason I'm going to do that is because the red is so vibrant that it just overpowers. And that'll tone the red down some, and then the black will go over it and cover that over anyway. So I have a black around the edge, red in the center, and then I'll take around here, I'll probably just leave it light brown around this and fade it out, or wash it out so that there's a little bit of a sunburst around this too, but it'll probably be in a very light brown color. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it and how it's going to turn out. Every one of these things turns out different because I'm using alcohol dyes, leather dyes is what I'm using. And it's not real easy to control, not terribly hard, but we'll see how it turns out is the best I can tell you. And you can keep adjusting it. That's the one good thing about the alcohol dyes. If you don't like how it is, you can try something else, you know. And then I'm going to take an airbrush and do some black around to really darken the outer edge, and you know, lightly fade it into the red inside. So hopefully it's going to work out really nice. Well, I'm almost afraid to show you the next little step here. This looks this way every time and it recovers, so don't be too upset. But see, it's all stained with a light brown and it's blotchy, partly because it's wet in places and not in others, but it just soaks in at different rates in the wood grain too. You can still see the rose there, red and green, but it's kind of dark around it. That's because I had to use a paintbrush to get in there and paint the brown around it, and that got a little darker because it gets more on the brush than on the rag. But anyway, the only positive thing at this point, you can see a whole lot of curl. There's a lot of curl in this wood. But anyway, it'll look better. There's still places where I don't have any stain down in here and all that, but that won't matter because that's going to be black, and it doesn't really matter whether you get this brown in there or not. The brown, again, is just kind of a neutralizing factor for the red, the way I think of it. When you put the red on there direct, it's on that white wood, it just almost like turns pink. It's just weird colored, and I'm colorblind, so I have to just kind of go by memory more than I go by sight. But anyway, so I've got the brown on there, and then next I'm going to try a little bit of sunbursting on the back, and I'll bring that back and show you what that looks like. Well, here's the next step with the red applied, and I pretty much put the red over the whole thing. It doesn't look all that impressive right now, but the red will come back a lot once you know, the black goes on around the edges and the clear goes on. The red will start to pop then, but I've done a lot of them this way, and it doesn't look real impressive right now, but it's gonna come back, I promise you. Okay, we're a little step further. Got the red applied And you can see it's a little hard to, it doesn't show up on the camera like it shows up here. I can see that in the camera already that it's looking different than it does here. But then I will, I have to scrape all the binding off, and then I have to also, like where these two colors meet, I'll take some alcohol and blend the two colors together a little bit more so that you can't really tell where one starts and one stops. Anyway, it's getting there. It's just part of the steps that you have to go through. It just takes a lot of time. Nothing simple about it. Got a little bit ahead of myself. I started scraping the binding off on the back to kind of show you how it's going to set off, but then I got to thinking I'm going to use an airbrush on this to fade this all in, and so the airbrush is going to cover it back up anyway, so there's not much point in scraping the binding off right now. But anyway, still a lot to do yet. Just a quick update. Nothing has changed, I don't believe, since my last little clip. I let my wife look this over really close because, as I've mentioned already, I'm colorblind, and she compared it to the photo that was provided by Thomas, and she proclaimed that she thinks I've got it pretty close. So I'll show you the photo. Hopefully that'll show up there. So that's what Thomas was looking for. Mine might be a hair darker, but that's just part of the way it happens, you know. Now I'm going to airbrush around the edges too. That'll make it a little bit more black, and then and then I can lightly fade the airbrush over where the black and the red meet, and that'll help tone down, I believe, the borderline there. But anyway, that's where we're headed now, so I'll bring you back after we do a little airbrushing. Thought I'd give you an update just before I spray the first coat of lacquer on it. I've done the airbrushing around it to kind of blend the colors and everything, and it's looking pretty good. Got it all cleaned up. I got tape on the fretboard here so that I don't get a lot of overspray of the lacquer on there. I've got paper crammed down inside of it so I don't get any overspray inside the instrument. I've already got lacquer on there because I did the hair brushing, so I may just go ahead and scrape it before I put the lacquer on it. Now that I think about it, I think I will. So I think I'll go ahead and clean the binding up, and then I'll show you what it looks like just before I put the lacquer on it. Here's what she looks like with the binding cleaned up. And of course there's no lacquer on it other than just the spray around the edges. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a real pretty mandolin when we get the lacquer on there. I think it's going to change the looks of it a lot. And I'll bring you back when we get some lacquer on there so you can see what it looks like. Well, it's the second day of the staining and finishing process. I've got 2 coats of lacquer on this. It's starting to look pretty good, but it's a long way from being done. The thing about this finish is, this lacquer, if you've never done it before, at least this is my experience over 30 years, is that you could, and I'm just using this as an example, let's say you took a little needle and you poked the tiniest little pinhole in the top here, one that you couldn't even hardly see with your eye. Well, that little pinhole will grow up to be about an 1/8 inch in diameter the way this lacquer works. If for some reason it spreads away from that and just creates a crater. So every little minor defect just blows up in proportion with this lacquer. At least that's been my experience. I don't know any way to avoid that. I wish I did. If somebody's got a way to avoid that, tell me, because I'd love to know. But anyway, you spray it on there like that, so all of the grain that, you know, raises, any little defect in the grain, it all just amplifies with this lacquer. So right now it looks the worst it'll ever, or about as bad as it's going to look. Actually, the problem is that as it dries over several days, it gets worse and worse. So that's why you have to let it dry. So I'll put about a total of 6 coats. I put 2 on yesterday, I'll put another couple on today, and then probably tomorrow I'll put another couple of coats on it. Then I'm going to let it dry for about a week. Then I'll sand it all level. And when you sand it level, you pretty much sand most of the lacquer off. As a matter of fact, sometimes you'll sand through slightly and you got to repair that area. So you got to be careful. But anyway, I'll level it as good as I can. Then I'll put another probably 4 to 6 coats on it and then probably level it one more time. Then I'll put some final coats on it and let it set for about a month. And then we'll, rub it out, buff it out, and it'll be like a hand rub finish. It'll be sort of like a semi-gloss, a little bit glossy, but not crazy glossy when I get done with it. But anyway, it's looking about as good as I should expect it to look right now, and it'll get better from this point on. The neck area there, you can see, kind of shows up too. I hadn't really showed that area. Kind of just made it a red sunburst also. But I think it's going to be a real beautiful instrument once it's finished. It just has to go through the ugly duckling process first. I want to thank you for watching. I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers and welcome aboard. Tell your friends. I'd like to increase my number of subscribers substantially. So we're looking to try to grow the channel here and see what we can do. And if there's anything you'd like to see in the way of building or repairing instruments, just let me know. Just drop me a note. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.